snapshot. It's a goal. In a thriller in the state of origin.
Lions spins out of trouble beautifully. The opportunity was there for Whitbar. It still is. The kick is long, the kick is high, the kick is good.
Gary Ablett stands his ground, and that's what footy's all about.
Picked up by Buchanara, Smith. It's going to the goal. Goal. Put him in front. Oh, in the front of Buchanara. Oh, what a game this is.
Well, this is a great quiz question for everyone out there. Who kicked the West Coast Eagles' first ever goal? It was my next guest. His name is Laurie Keene. Laurie, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Matt. Thanks for having us on.
Can you recall that first goal? Can you picture it in your mind?
Well, only because I've seen it on YouTube since. It was probably 10 years after the event that it came to my attention because strangers were coming up to me and saying that it was a quiz night question. So until that very first person, I'd never given it a thought because you sort of didn't celebrate those things back then. And when you do watch it on TV, I think only one player came up to me, whereas, nowadays the whole team comes up to you when you kick your first goal. So, it just wasn't one of those things that was celebrated widely, and I never gave it any thought. But, I didn't achieve a hell of a lot, so I'm proud of that one at least.
Yeah, no one on commentary even made mention of it either, and like you said, nowadays it would be spoken about, it would do the social media rounds, so yeah, very different time. How would you describe your kicking style to someone who has never seen it?
A bit rangy, I suppose. Dennis Comedy had a few adjectives to describe me, but I prided myself on my kicking. I wasn't a particularly great overhead mark, but I was a long, accurate kick, so that was something I tried to keep going, and probably I was kicking better at the end of my career than at the beginning. So it was just something that evolved, really. I didn't do any extra practice over and above what everyone else was doing, I don't think. I was just long-limbed and left-footed and could drop it straight with my left hand and seemed to go okay.
Well, I was looking up some of your highlights recently and I came across a great goal. It was nominated for Goal of the Year in 1987, actually. It was a big torpedo from about 70 out. I don't know if I was fully able to appreciate the goal, though, because I was so distracted by the mustard yellow shorts you guys were wearing back then. I think it might be the ugliest thing anyone's ever worn on a footy field, the old school Eagles shorts, Laurie. It was shocking.
Yeah, we had yellow jumper and yellow shorts there for a while, but I think we were called the West Coast Canaries or something, and they soon quickly disappeared, thankfully. But they weren't the best look.
It was a different time back then, the 80s, wasn't it? What was your fashion sense like back then? What were you rocking on a Saturday night out?
No better than it is now. That's a question I wouldn't have been expecting. No idea. Just whatever was. Oh, when you're tall and thin like I am, it's you don't get a lot of choice. So Perth doesn't cater for tall guys that well. Melbourne a lot better, but no, I can't comment on my clothing. I'm sure it wasn't much chop.
Hey, what was it like coming into the VFL at that time as a West Australian team, 1987? Because that is when the competition started to become a truly national one, with Brisbane also entering the comp in the same year. Yeah,
well, Sydney had already moved from South Melbourne to Sydney, so Sydney Swans, I mean. So, and then when we joined with Brisbane, it became national. It's still called the VFL for a couple more years after that before they changed the name to AFL. But, they were exciting times for sure. I'd just come off a flag with Subiaco in 86, so that was the end of the waffle as we know it, It was sort of a weekend comp because of a lot of players were always going to Victoria, which was the mecca of football. And when the Eagles formed, of course, a whole heap more went out of the waffle, and still a lot more were lost to Victoria that very year. So, but it was exciting to be part of a new club with, knew everything. We were literally, changing out of the back of Hank's van and training in all sorts of different venues and going to Victoria every second week to play footy, which was, quite a thrill to pit yourself up against, well, in my case, the best ruckman in the VFL at the time. It was a real challenge, yeah.
How were you recruited to West Coast? Because it all came together pretty quickly, didn't it? You look at Tasmania now, who have years to put it all together. I think West Coast at the time only had something like 160 days.
Oh, right. I had my best year in footy in 86 with Subi, so I was being sort of courted by the Sydney Swans, and I was pretty much gone at the end of 86. I was going to go there. Well, that was the decision my wife and I made at the time. And I didn't know what my value was. We didn't have managers, we were, working a day and training at night and playing on weekends. So none of us had managers, and you didn't really know what you're worth. And when Sydney threw up a figure, I was slightly disappointed. I was only guessing what I might be worth, and I wasn't expecting as little as that. And then Graham Moss, who was running around trying to sign up as many Western Australians as you possibly could before the Victorians got hold of them all, he offered me, nearly twice as much. So it was a no-brainer to stay in Perth and sign up with Graham. And I think I even signed up before I knew what we were even called. So
Wow.
I was happy to do that because my wife was pregnant at the time, so it was better to stay home and not chance myself over there.
You mentioned 86, your year at Subiaco, best and fairest, a premiership year, and you were coached by Hayden Bunton Jr., such a famous name here in WA. What was he like to play under?
He was fantastic. He was a real hard but fair coach. Every player, I think, pretty much really rated him highly, and he got the best out of us as soon as he walked in the club in 84. We improved. 85, we lost to East Fremantle in the grand final. 86, we won. So it was a rapid rise from the early 80s when we were almost the laughingstock of the competition. So Hayden's a terrific man, and I haven't seen him for quite a while, and I wish him well. Yeah. I'd heard that he'd been offered the job for the Eagles but turned it down, but I don't know if that's rumour or what. But he just didn't want to sort of have to travel every second week and all that sort of stuff. But Ron was a great coach too.
Now, there was a lot of support for a WA team to get into the VFL, I think because of how well Western Australia went at the National Carnival in 1986. Is that correct?
I think it started before then. Good friend of mine and friend of many, Bill Mitchell, he did a paper in about 84, 85, I think, saying that waffle footy was on its last legs if something wasn't done, and he pushed very hard, along with others, I'm sure, to get a team from Western Australia in the national comp. So, but 86, it all sort of came together. The state game was terrific because we only won that by a few points, but everybody knew that the cream of Western Australian footy was going across the Nullarbor every year, so it didn't take... Well, it was Leon Larkin, I think, that came up with the concept of State of Origin footy in 1977, the Subiaco man. So, it'd been going well since then. Victoria had won some and we'd won some, but in 86 we beat South Australia and Victoria and were national champions. So it all culminated in 87, late 86, the Eagles being formed, and away we went.
Well, what are your recollections of the national championships in 86? As you mentioned, a very good win against South Australia at Football Park, and then that all-time classic against the Vics at Subi.
Oh, very fond memories because that was the sort of, you couldn't aim any higher than that at the time. Obviously, a waffle premiership was terrific, but I hadn't had one at that stage. So to play for WA was the ultimate, and once again to beat the Vics and the Crow Eaters was all time, and then to be named All Australian after that was a real honour. And I had fond memories of the game. In fact, I only watched it a couple of days ago because in preparation for your chat, because I couldn't remember much about the game apart from winning. So I watched it all, and I was surprised at how good the game was and the intensity. And to see all those my old teammates and adversaries playing was it was quite good to watch, actually.
Some people say it's the greatest game that's ever been played. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I think when the very first one, I think 77, we beat Victoria, I believe. So that would have been fantastic to be part of, but I was way too young for that, obviously. But it'd be up there. It'd certainly be up there because Victoria looked like they'd won. 5 minutes towards the end, they were a couple of goals up, and I think Dennis Cometti and Lou Richards and Eric Sarich had sort of pretty much said that Western Australia were gone, and Buckenara and McNish and so many good players did so many magic things in those last few minutes. The Wayne Blackwell smother, that one could argue that won us the game. There's some terrific highlights, and Maurice Rioli, Pete kicking 7. So Brett Hardy, obviously great game. So it was a good game to be part of.
How did you handle competing against Justin Madden in the ruck?
Yeah, well, that was a real challenge because I'd obviously never played on him before. I thought I started well, and then he got on top of me for a little while there. But I was changing off the bench like they were. I don't think he was coming off as often as I was, so I was changing with Paul Harding, and even Peter Satori had a run in there a couple of times. So, but I didn't like going off the ground, but that's what you did back then, and they do a lot more now, of course. But another thing that changed the course of the game, and I've told Joffa this, when Jeff Miles shirt fronted Justin Madden in the last quarter, you don't see it, but the commentators talk about it, and Joffa was good at taking out players like that. It'd be illegal now, but he was good at taking out players that weren't watching him. And Madden limped off, and then I was able to ruck on Paul Salmon, who was very young at the time, I think about 21, 22. So he was a sort of an easier player for me to get the better of than Justin Madden was, because he was a very established ruckman and heavier than I was. Yeah, good player.
Now, you mentioned a few of the West Australian players that stood out in that game. Who did you love getting to play with in state games that you wouldn't have gotten to play with otherwise?
Probably. I didn't bond with any of them. It was all over very quickly. We hardly had a training session. I probably hung out with my Subi boys more than any of them. Dwayne Lamb and Andrew McNish. There weren't too many in that game, I don't think. Dean Laidley was a guy that I knew quite well. But the blokes from Victoria, I can't even remember really chatting to them much. But it was more of an honour, and I was sort of a bit awestruck, I suppose, to be in the same team as Ross Glendinning and Brian Peake, Maurice Rioli, like I said, Gary Buckenara, who I knew a little bit because he left Subi when I was quite young. They were great players, and it was good to see, blokes like Peter Davidson, who's since passed away, and of course, who else was there? Of course, Maurice Rioli's passed away, and Darren Mullane, and even Chris Mainwaring. He was the runner that day, which I remember quite well because he was a chance to play, and he didn't quite make the cut, and Ron offered him the job of runner, and he took that, which I thought was incredibly good form on his behalf. I know if I'd been offered the running job and missed out, I certainly wouldn't have taken it. But so Manny was a legend too, and played a lot of good footy after that, of course.
Yeah, great character, it shows. And you mentioned a couple of those big highlights, the Gary Buckenara goal at the end, Brian Peake kicking 7, and the Wayne Blackwell smother. And I guess those sort of highlights have been a little bit forgotten about, maybe because State of Origin isn't as prominent, or hasn't been prominent in the last 20, 30 years. So what are your thoughts on the AFL bringing back State of Origin footy this year?
I think it's a great idea. It lost its way there for a while when players didn't want to play, or coaches didn't want their gun players to be released because of fear of injury, and that's understandable. But by having it in mid-February, there's time to recover if a player or two does get a bit hurt. So I think it's a great concept, and it's not some of those pre-season games don't mean a lot, but this one will mean a lot. And as long as the players embrace it, which sounds like they are, looking at some of the adverts, I think it's a great concept and a great honour to play for your state. Even though AFL footy is everything, I think state footy, there's a place for state footy. And when you watch the Rugby League State of Origin, I mean, there are 3 games of rugby that I never miss just because they're so great. So I think it should do well, and I hope the West Australian public support it.
I hope so too. And you're right with the NRL and rugby league. That transcends rugby league fans. You watch that as a neutral, as a casual. It would be great if the AFL got it back to that. I don't know if it will hold that much weight, but do you think it will hold enough weight to work as an ongoing game?
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, I think South Australia's got to be included, and they probably are, just unaware of it. But whether it gets to NRL status, that game is just incredible to watch. I don't really follow rugby league that much, but I watch those three just because they're such terrific games, and especially if it goes to a decider. But no, it mightn't. It all depends on, bums on seats and the TV rights and that sort of thing, I suppose, as to how well it's followed. But I hope it's good. I really do, and I'm looking forward to going and watching it, actually.
Here with Laurie Keene, the man who kicked the very first goal for the West Coast Eagles. Laurie, how many years did your career get cut short at West Coast, do you think?
Well, I never played another game after 90 when I did my Achilles for the umpteenth time. So, and I was kept on the list for 91, 92, hoping to come good. I had a few more surgeries during that period, and I think I would have walked into the 92 team and possibly the 94 team. I would have been 33 by the 94 team. So, ruckman matured quite late, and I was at my sort of peak around 1990. So I'd like to think I could have, walked into those two games. But and answer to your question, probably 4 or 5 years. Yeah, at least.
Mm. How much knowledge was there surrounding Achilles injuries at the time?
My injury was a little bit unique, I guess. And I was my worst enemy. I pushed for the doctors to push it along, and I got needles and things like this, which I shouldn't have done, and I blame myself completely for all the trauma that transpired. But and it was, there weren't too many guys my height that were doing Achilles around then, I don't suppose. And it was my jumping leg. I couldn't really jump off my left, so I was predominantly jumping off my right, which is the right Achilles was the one. So we just managed it poorly. These days you'd be straight into a moon boot and resting it and doing everything else, But back then you didn't treat them as well as it could have been, I don't think.
Mm. So what happened when you finished up with West Coast? As you mentioned, you were on the list there for a couple of years, saw the 92 premiership, and I think you went back to Subi at one point, tried to play a little bit of footy. So, what happened when you finished up? Yeah,
I sort of rested for a year or two, just didn't do anything, and it just, like a lot of injuries, they just sort of mend by themselves. It was mostly a stress-related thing, and I had a couple of belated unsuccessful comebacks with Subi when Tony Solon was coach and Gary Buckenara was coach. I played probably a handful of games, but by then other bits and pieces were starting to fall off. So, I just couldn't sort of hold up. But the Achilles was okay, actually. But I was just getting too old and bent out of shape, I think.
Do you still keep up with modern day footy?
Oh yeah, I love watching AFL. Yeah, definitely. I went to the gather round in Adelaide this year. It's something I hadn't done before, so that was a good trip. So I saw 3 games over there, and I went to the 2 Bunbury games when West Coast played North Melbourne. So I went to both of those games this year. But the Eagles haven't been much fun to watch at the moment, so I haven't been to too many other games.
Mm. Do you think they're heading in the right direction, because they've had quite a long period of suffering?
Well, I think they have to. They can't really go any lower, so they can either stay where they are or just go up. So no, I think there'll be improvement. It looks like they've recruited some good players, and I think McQualter in his second year will be much more aggressive with his coaching. I hope he is anyway. I think he'll do a lot better this year. I think last year was a real learning curve for him to see how bad we really were, and I'd expect the Eagles to win a lot more games than one, that's for sure, or a few more at least.
Yeah, hopefully so for all of the West Coast fans out there. What about waffle footy? Do you watch any waffle footy?
I only went to one live game last year, Subi game. And they had it was a bad year for my team. Subi had a bad season as well, but I expect they'll go better too with Jared Schofield now coaching. And we've got a new CEO in Kelly Popper-John. So I had a meeting with her the other day about something, and she's very excited and got a lot of ambitious plans for the club. And with Jared there, I think he'll pull back be able to pull some name players in because Subi need to, improve their stocks. So I expect they'll have a better year too. So I'm looking forward to both teams getting on the park.
You mentioned mid-'80s, the waffle was on its knees, and 86 was really the last true year of the waffle as we knew it back then. The waffle as it stands now, I was a little disappointed with the crowd numbers at the grand final last year, considering we had two very well-supported clubs in there, South Fremantle and East Perth. Is there anything the waffle can do to rejuvenate itself a little bit? And I'm not saying get it back to what it was, because it never will be. The AFL is the juggernaut. But is there any way we can boost its following?
Yeah, I don't know, Matt. I'm not really into advertising or anything like that. There must be some things they could do, but there'd be much more intelligent people out there than me that would have some ideas. I guess just promoting it and highlighting the players that they've got, the good players. But no, I really don't know. I hopefully it gets better. But I enjoyed that grand final. South Fremantle East Perth game. It was good to watch.
It was a great game of footy, really intriguing all the way through, and the finish was controversial, so it added something to it. Hey, Laurie, do you still surf?
Oh no, I haven't surfed for a long time. I've had multiple back surgeries, so I can't even lie on a surfboard without pain. But no, so I don't surf anymore, unfortunately. But I live down here in the southwest, so I'm surrounded by it. But I like swimming and getting in the ocean and fishing and stuff. So got no complaints about my lifestyle down here, that's for sure.
Beautiful. Sounds great. And of course, I should make mention as well, Laurie Keene, synonymous with one of the Colts competitions here in WA. How did that come about, the Laurie Keene Colts?
I think the late Ron Webster was responsible for that. The first I heard about it, I was never asked. Not that I would have, and it's almost embarrassing, really. But there was a few. I think it was something to do with amateurs, because I had 1 year at Innaloo amateurs. After Karrinyup, I went to Innaloo for a year, and then I joined Subiaco. So it was something to do with, there's a Phil Scott. I think there's a Phil Scott grade, and maybe
Drew Banfield, I think.
Drew Banfield, maybe an Ian Dargy. I think there were guys that all played maybe a bit of amateur footy and then went and played Colts or something. I don't know how it all started, but it's an honour to have anything named after me. But I'm surprised they haven't changed it to more recent players, which they probably should do, because I'm sure all the boys that play in those competitions wouldn't have heard of us.
No, I think they would have. Who did you idolise as a kid when you were growing up, when you were playing at Karrinyup? Who was it that you loved watching play?
Well, I was an East Perth fanatic, only because my best friend at the time barracked for East Perth, so I used to just follow East Perth players. So, I could name some of those teams off by heart almost, but none in particular, I don't suppose. But I used to, even when I got to play Subi Colts, and sounds quite strange, but I used to play Subi Colts and hop in my car and go and watch the East Perth League team, because I didn't barrack for Subi then. So, and that's where I became good friends with a lot of East Perth players to this day. And it was only when I got elevated the next year to East Perth Subiaco reserves that I thought, I suppose I'm going to have to start following this mob, and then I did, and no regrets. But I guess when I was super young, when I was playing Colts and that, I was a big fan of Stephen Michael, and still am actually. And so it was a real honour to make my way through the grade and play against Stephen, who was 25 as well, number 25, and Graham Moss, who was 25 as well. So I really tried to set myself for those two, but I'm sure they tailed me up the first few times I played them.
Well, I think you would have had some wins against them too. Two-time premiership player at Subiaco, All-Australian 1986, and as mentioned, the first player to ever kick a goal for the West Coast Eagles. Laurie, it's been a pleasure chatting to you on the show this afternoon. Thank you very much for taking the time, and all the very best.
Well, thanks very much, Matt. It's a real honour to be on your show. Thanks very much. See ya.
Laurie Keene here on Sports Drive today, putting a spotlight on State of Origin footy.